So good evening everyone. I'm Dr. Neha Gupta from Giggles Clinic and my own space. And today we are going to talk about the neuroscience behind sensory issues. So what exactly goes in the brain of a child or an adult who is experiencing a sensory issue and what mechanisms go on? So we are going to talk about that today. So first and foremost, I talk about the topic. I would like to tell you few terms. And these three terms are sensory registration, sensory discrimination, and sensory modulation. We have heard of these terms every now and then when we talk of sensory issues. So what is sensory registration? Sensory registration matlab register matlab anything that you can feel. Okay. So if I got a touch on my hand, then that means I have registered. The moment this registration happens in my brain is called sensory registration. Now, this registration might not be same for everybody. So, if I get a light tap on my hand, I am registering this sensory stimulus. But for a child who is having a high threshold or who is hypo in nature, hyposensitive, for him this registration has not occurred. So maybe if you just give him a tap, then he might register the sensation or the stimulus. So this is the registration for him. And for a child who is hypersensitive, so he will, if you just give him a very, very light touch, then it will become sensory registration for him. Okay, so any point where your brain is getting that stimulus that, okay, I have received some input is the sensory registration. So this particular thing is important when we talk of sensory things because it is the level at which the child is perceiving the sensory stimulus. Another thing is sensory discrimination. So now I felt something touched on my hand, but where exactly and what touched? So these two things, what touched or where it touched, not for only for the tactile issue, but for anything. What was the noise, where it came from? Okay, so any input that you get, so what and where of it is called sensory discrimination. Whether I touched a soft thing, whether I touched a hard thing, whether I heard a loud noise, whether I heard a soft noise, whether I got fast swing, whether I got low swing, whether I'm sitting on a platform swing or I'm sitting on a lycra swing, what kind of textures I'm feeling, all this is called sensory discrimination. And sensory modulation. Sensory modulation is the intake of sensation and producing a response which is in context, which is like in response to the degree, intensity, and quality of response in a graded manner and as per the environment. So, if you are receiving same stimulus in a different environment, the responses might be different. And if you are giving same stimulus, but the degree of stimulus is different, the environment is same, then also the responses will be different. So sensory modulation may basically you have a graded and an adaptive response. Adaptive responses according to the nature and the intensity of the stimulus and according to the environment. So that response generation is called sensory modulation. So what are the parts of nervous system? Broadly talking, nervous system is divided into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system may we have spinal cord, brainstem and brain. Peripheral may we have autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is further divided into sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. There's another theory called polyvagal theory which divides autonomic system into three parts: sympathetic system, parasympathetic system, and the social engagement system. But we are not discussing it here. Okay. So we will be talking about only the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system, which is broadly accepted. Okay. So when the body receives a sensory input, it gets the message through the nerves, through the nerve endings or the receptors present in the whole body. It goes through the nervous system, goes to the peripheral system, and then to the central nervous system. But the face senses, the hearing, the vestibular, the vision, the smell, they travel straight to the brain. So जो भी stimulus हमारी body part से आ रहे हैं, हमारे hands, legs, tummy, chest, back, shoulders. So all of them are going first to the peripheral system and then to the central nervous system. But the stimulations that we're getting from the face, your smell, your vision, your vestibular, and your hearing, these directly go to the central nervous system. So what responses can the brain generate? So as we have seen in the peripheral system, हमारा central system जो है वो सिर्फ command देता है. It just gives the command, and the peripheral system is the one that acts. So it can act autonomically or it can act in a somatic system. So somatic is voluntary, which is into control, and autonomic is involuntary, which we have no control over or very partial limited control. Okay, so there can be two types of responses that can be generated from the brain. It can either be voluntary or it can be involuntary. So involuntary responses में हमारे आते हैं mainly survival mechanisms. For example, your breathing, your heart rate, your digestive systems, and the major movements for which you do not need any practice. Okay, these come under involuntary. Involuntary movements maybe we can have partial control due to the cortical involvement. And like we need to, suppose we're swimming. Okay, so I'm underwater and I need to hold my breath. So I can hold my breath for few seconds, but as soon as my brain registers that my body is under stress and there is a threat to life, it will take over and it will enter into a sympathetic zone, and where it will show a fight, flight, or freeze response. So up to a certain level, we can have a cortical control on few things. If you need to use the restroom, so you can hold it for few minutes depending upon your cortical control. But beyond that, the body will take control and produce a larger response than it would have done previously. So brain is constantly monitoring what information comes and it makes sure that the body is safe. So coming again to the nervous system. As we talked, central nervous system has brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system has motor neurons, sensory neurons. Under motor neurons, it has somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system controls voluntary movement. Autonomic controls involuntary responses. Autonomic further has two branches, sympathetic and parasympathetic. We're going to talk in detail about it. So now to understand it better. So suppose you see an aeroplane or a butterfly or a bird, anything. Okay, you see and then you can judge and decide whether I want to keep looking at it or not. And if you want to look at it, you can follow the track and voluntarily decide that I'm going to track the path or watch the butterfly or watch the aeroplane. So this movement is entirely in my control, which is controlled by the somatic nervous system. But if suddenly I'm standing and I feel some insect touching my hand, then I will automatically brush it off and move back. So this movement is not under my control. It is a reflexive movement and it happens automatically. This particular movement is under the control of autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, as the name suggests, is automatic. This particular system is responsible for keeping us alive, keeping the heart beating, keeping the lungs breathing. It shuts down the digestive system also. Digestive system is under the control of parasympathetic system. Okay, so our sympathetic system is the fight, flight, freeze system, and the parasympathetic system is the rest and digest system. Sympathetic branches are activated when the body feels a threat. So historically, if we see when we were cavemen and all, so there were many predators. So this particular system was perceiving the threats, whether something is going to attack or not, and it got activated. So it would either send the person into the fight mode, that he is going to resist the predator, or it's going to the flight mode, he runs away from there, or it goes in the freeze mode, where you just stand and do nothing. Like we see in the serials, right? कोई सामने से there's a truck coming and the hero or the heroine suddenly freezes on the spot and there's an accident. So what happens there? What happens is you see the threat coming towards yourself and you are not able to react to it. Your sympathetic system has kicked in and it has sent you into the freeze mechanism. Before freeze, however, comes the fight or the flight. If the body cannot react to these, then it will enter into the freeze zone where you are immobilized. Okay. In nowadays scenario, we are not under that kind of threat as in the predatory threat, but we have the stress factors which are very common in today's scenario. So whenever we have too much stress, then also the sympathetic nervous system will kick in. So, like for example, I'm doing something which I'm nervous about. So, what do you feel happens? You start sweating and your heart is racing and your breath is faster and your digestive system does not respond. So, it goes into that non-working mode. So, all those changes happen when you are under stress. So, the very common scenario in this new day life or this new lifestyle is the stress factor. For the kids who are experiencing sensory stimulus, whenever they perceive a stimulus as a threat, they immediately go to the sympathetic nervous system zone. The opposite branch of it is parasympathetic branch. Parasympathetic branch is opposite to the sympathetic. It keeps us rested, calm, and it helps in digestion and everything. It slows everything down. When we talk of sensory stimulus, we usually say that give proprioceptive input, it calms down the child. Now, why it calms down the child is because it is likely that it activates the parasympathetic system. When the parasympathetic system is activated, then the child enters into a rest zone and he's calm. This zone can be activated by various other methods. It can be activated by vagal stimulation, it can be activated by controlled breathing, and it can be activated by regulation mechanisms, the calming down strategy. So these two systems, they keep on working continuously. So sympathetic sometimes kick in, sometimes parasympathetic kicks in. So there's this nerve called vagus nerve that helps the body control these actions. So I was talking about the polyvagal theory where the role of vagus nerve has been described, how it controls the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the social engagement zone. If you want to know more about it, you can go through the Safe and Sound Protocol video in our YouTube channel to know how this particular thing works. So this particular nerve controls our interoceptive sense because it innervates almost all the internal organs of the body. And the most uh, threats or the changes, if your interoception is not working properly, so your external stimuli, they also become overly reactive or it becomes aggravated. If you are calmer inside, you are better in control if you face a new stimulus. So interoceptive sense plays a huge role in keeping the child calm. So talking of this peripheral nervous system, somatic nervous system makes a control by choice and discrimination. But autonomic is for survival, protection and reflex. Sympathetic increases your energy, heart and breathing and stops digestion. This is frequently activated when we are under stress. Parasympathetic decreases energy, decreases the heart rate, decreases breathing, starts digestion. It helps in reproduction and it is usually activated when we are calm and in rest stage. So these days, as I was mentioning, stresses come in a variety of forms. So, any stress, family stress, financial stress, environmental stress, people talking, that anything can let you go in a sympathetic kick in. Because if we have something coming, even I'm walking on the road, and if I'm a little low on the threshold, I suddenly hear a dog barking and I perceive it as a threat. So my body will react to it as a threat, and my sympathetic zone will be activated immediately. It will be for a very short time, and then I will realize that no, it is dog barking. This thing we can realize and we can inhibit the sympathetic response. But in our kids, this inhibition is frequently missing. We're going to talk about inhibition. Okay, and as the stresses are way more, if the sensory stimulus is way more in the life, this particular sympathetic branch is turned on for a longer time. However, it is not designed in our body to be switched on for a longer time. The main control of the body is supposed to be in the hands of the parasympathetic system. So sympathetic system, if it is switched on for a longer time, it continually keeps the body under stress. So it becomes a sort of vicious circle. It is activated by stress and it keeps the body under stress. For individuals, again, like I mentioned, who experience sensory overload or who perceive sensory stimuli very much in the environment, this particular system is more active. In case of stresses, in case of high anxieties, again, we have more of sympathetic system working. So let's talk about few areas of the brain. So broadly speaking, as you can see in the diagram, I hope you can see my cursor. So we have this brain and it is divided into main parts, which is brain stem, then your limbic system, which comprises of thalamus, hypothalamus, hippocampus, and I'm going to talk about amygdala in my further presentation. And then we have cerebellum and we have the cortex. So these are the major areas of the brain. So our brain stem, which is here, it is also called reptilian brain or the snake brain. It is also called the action brain. So it helps us in keeping alive. It helps us to breathe, for our heart beating, for reproduction, for toileting, and for some sensory registration. So this brainstem is mostly for the involuntary or the ingoing systems. It is not controlling much of the environment, but what goes in the body, which we need continuously. Second is your limbic system or the mammalian brain, or we call rat brain, or we call the emotional brain. So this particular area is very important when it comes to sensory system, and this is the area which is playing a key role in the reactions which we get from the children in the sensory system. So this particular system keeps us safe, it detects danger, it helps in the formation of memory, it motivates, it is the seat for emotions and behavior. So whatever emotions and whatever emotional dysregulation or regulation, emotional changes and the behavioral changes we get is primarily controlled by this particular region. And it is also a seat for smell. So the stimulus of the smell is something that enters directly into the limbic system. Rest of the things, rest of the stimuli, they go to the brainstem first and then they go to the limbic system. But smell goes directly to the limbic system. Then you have cerebellum. Cerebellum controls your movement, your timing, your organization, coordination, and smooth control of the body. So all the your bilateral coordinations, your eye-hand coordinations, your smooth movements, your composure, everything is under the control of cerebellum. Then we have the cortex. Cortex is also called your thinking brain. This is larger in humans than other mammals, and this is where the sensory discrimination occurs. So sensory registration and modulation basically occurs in the limbic system, but in cortex, the sensory discrimination occurs and the inhibition occurs here. There are different parts that control different functions. So cortex is huge. It is divided into further lobes, which we're not going to get into details, but it has a sensory area and a motor area, which I'm going to briefly talk about. So let's understand it very simply. Okay, we have here brain stem, which is called the snake brain. We have here the limbic system, which is called the rat brain or the mammalian brain. And this is the cortex, which is our thinking brain. So as mentioned, snake brain or the brainstem, it is regulating only the basic mechanisms in the body. Your limbic system is what is reacting to the sensory stimuli in the body, and they are mostly generating a response unless cortex or the thinking brain inhibits certain stimuli and takes an action to control it. So how these connect? Historically, it was thought that it is linear, that only the information enters the brainstem, it goes to the limbic, it goes to the cortex. Then the cortex decides what is to be done, it goes to limbic, and then it goes to brainstem, and it goes to the motor parts. But the current understanding says that all parts are interrelated. So information can go from brainstem to limbic, limbic to cortex, cortex to limbic, cortex to brainstem. So all the areas are interconnected. We have many neuronal channels which are connecting different parts of the brain. So when regulated, the cortex can exert control over other parts of the brain. This is important because what we usually see, there's a sudden sound in the background, a child having an auditory sensitivity, okay? And there's a sudden sound in the background. What will happen? The child will perceive it as a threat. I won't, not exactly threat, let's say stress factor. Okay, he perceives it as a stress factor. The stimulus goes to the brainstem and then the limbic system. Limbic system perceives it as a stress factor. It immediately responds by activating the sympathetic system. So here we see that either the child can enter into a zone where he is maybe jumping or shouting or reacting aggressively or running away from there, or he suddenly becomes zoned out. So any of these reactions when happening is because limbic system has produced a response and the child does not know how to regulate it. There is another child who knows regulation mechanisms. He can regulate himself within seconds and his cortex can inhibit the limbic system and he can go away from there. He can put on the noise cancelling headphones. He can put cotton plugs or he can just lower down the volume, do whatever it takes to avoid that stimulus. So for the cortex to exert its control, it is very important that the person has to be regulated or in the regulation zone. Okay, and also the control of the cortex can only be till a point where the body is not perceiving it as an ultimate stress. So suppose if you need to go to the example given here, you need to use a washroom or you need to go to the toilet. So you can voluntarily stop. The cortex has exerted inhibition that no, I'm not going to go here, I'm going to go and use a washroom. But you cannot inhibit it for a very long time. Then your limbic system is going to take control and you're going to void wherever, however you can. Okay, so cortex can inhibit, but up to a certain level. Apart from the smell, as I mentioned, everything goes directly to the brainstem first and then to the limbic, but smell goes directly to the limbic, and that is why the responses to smell can be more immediate and more intense. So talking of sensory modulation and sensory discrimination. So as we talked that limbic system is responsible for determining how important the sensory information is. It is primarily responsible for sensory modulation and registrations and all the responses generated here are primarily your protective response. So you mostly get your fight, flight or freeze responses. So suppose there's this child who has entered into therapy, okay, and he finds, kindly mute yourself. Uh, Thank you. Okay, so suppose this child enters into a therapy center and he sees the therapist, and it's not that the therapist is a danger or a threat to him, but maybe he is perceiving him as a threat or a stress factor. So what can the child do? The child can show behaviors, what we say, can be aggressive, can run away from there, try to run away from there. When he cannot do any of these two, we usually see that the child becomes unresponsive and he just zones out. He's not doing anything. So that scenario is when the sympathetic is working because he's perceiving therapist as a threat. But when he becomes, habituated to the therapist and they develop a rapport, then the child starts becoming calmer in his presence and the sympathetic is not kicked in at the very side of the therapist. So then the responses shift from sympathetic to the parasympathetic. That is, he's rested and he's responding well to the therapist. When we receive a stimuli from the environment, now like, so suppose we are walking and we see a spider web. Okay, so the touch of the web, you touched it here, and what will be the response? You just back off your hand and you move back. This is your first protective response. After that, the information is sent to my cortical regions or the cortex to see what touched me and where it touched me, and then I will analyze, and within seconds I know, okay, it was spider web. So either I can move from the other way, I can move I can put it off, I can take it off from my way, or I can just brush it off. I can do anything. That will be an informed choice. So, unless I am calm and regulated, if I'm already jittery, if I'm already anxious at that time, so I'll not know, oh my God, what to do. So, if I perceive this spider web and I'm not regulated, so I'll just maybe keep shouting that help me, or that is what happens with the children who don't know what to do. Whether I should move, whether I should stay, whether I should brush it off, I cannot decide because my mind is not in a state where it can make informed decisions. It is not regulated enough, it is not calm enough. So, for the responses to be informed, for the responses to be regulated, your mind has to be in a calmer zone. That is why we see that, towards the evening, usually we see sensory issues rising more because the whole day children are getting little stimulus, and they whole accumulate towards the evening where they lose out their regulation, their calming strategies, and they show more behaviors towards the evening because they haven't regulated themselves enough. So they need to calm themselves down and bring their bodies back to the parasympathetic zone time and again. Okay, like I told you with the spider web. So, talking of specific areas of the limbic system. So, there are main three areas that I'm going to talk about. First is thalamus, then hypothalamus, and the amygdala. So, thalamus is like the PA to the brain. This is the seat where all your sensory stimuli are going to come. They're going to organize. It will decide where a particular stimulus is going to go. So, it sends it to the particular zone. So, if it is auditory, it goes to the auditory channel. If it is tactile, it goes to the tactile channel. If it is smell, it goes to the smell. So, it is organized and it sees the priority. So if I heard a noise and if something touched on my hand, my body will prioritize which is a bigger threat or a bigger stress to me. So if I am more sensitive to the sounds, my body will first react to the sounds. If I'm more sensitive to the touch, my body will first react to the touch. So it will make a decision that which system we are going to prioritize. And this is also seen for sensory modulation. So we send the responses to the cortical regions. If it needs an immediate response, then the responses are sent from this region to the motor system. Then comes the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is basically your connection between the endocrine system and the nervous system. It controls the temperature, sleep rhythms, eating, reproduction, defensive behaviors. So it controls much of your interoceptive part. So interoceptive system is handled a lot by the hypothalamus, and if your interoceptive is in control, your internal regulation is there, then it is very comparatively easier. I won't say very easy, but comparatively easier for the child to regulate himself compared to the child who has sleep disturbances, who has gut issues, who doesn't know what is going on. Sometimes the beating of the heart can be threatening to the children. They don't know what's happening inside their bodies. Sometimes the children don't know what is going on inside the body. They don't feel the need to eat. They don't feel the need to void themselves. They don't feel the need to use the restrooms. So, both ways, either one is perceiving too many sensations going inside the body, and the other one is not perceiving at all. Both are stressful situations to the child. So, imagine yourself not feeling internally anything. It will scare you out, and every organ feeling something, again it will scare you off. So it controls those things. And this particular thing also, hypothalamus controls your defensive behavior. The amygdala, it is a very small part, as you can see the green part over here, but it is a very important organ when it comes to memory. So this is the area where memory organization and memory retrieval occurs. So if I have a previous experience which I had a bad emotional experience maybe. So this system stores it. It also stores the positive and negative both are controlled by amygdala. So if you have another situation where the same thing happens, this organ is going to retrieve it from the memory, and you remember the experience or the emotion, your reaction, what happened then there. Okay, and since the sense of smell reaches limbic system directly, smell is directly related to our memories. If you're aware of this, so if you have experienced a particular fragrance in some area, it will bring back that memory where you had seen it first, and it will be immediate as compared to other things like visual or auditory. You will still think, where did I see it, where did I hear it? But with the smell, it will be immediate retrieval of the memory. So it plays an important role in both your long term and your short term memory. This organ is also very important for controlling your emotions and behavior, especially the fear response. So, fear response, whenever you feel that thing, this amygdala becomes activated and it immediately sends the response back. Okay, so prefrontal cortex. Coming to the cortical region, I'm going to talk about only three things: prefrontal cortex, sensory cortex, and the motor cortex. So prefrontal cortex, we are all aware, I hope, that it is the seat of decision making, the executive functions. Basically, this area plays a huge role in the inhibition of our responses to the sensory stimuli. So if cortex can exert its control, then we can have controlled responses. If the cortex cannot exert its control, then we usually have the protective responses, which are very aggressive, which might be exaggerated in nature. So prefrontal cortex is where the decision making happens. It controls the executive functions, attention, planning, memory, organization, and the inhibition. Sensory cortex, as you can see, it is the area which processes touch and proprioception primarily, and it discriminates. So what and where of the sensory stimuli occurs here. And motor cortex is what makes the motor movements happen. It works with the sensory and the premotor area. This is homunculus. This is basically a design which we have in our brain in comparison to the body parts. So you can see the body parts mentioned here: your knee, hip, neck, head, up to the tongue. So face occupies a huge area in the homunculus. So a lot of sensations, a lot of nerve innervations and stimuli go from the face to the brain. Okay. One is the sensory where it perceives, and other red part is the motor where it is giving the instructions to the motor part as to what action has to be taken. So a little more about the fight, flight and freeze response. Fight, flight, freeze, as we talked, is a protective response. And it is something we have very, very little control about. So if I got any sensory stimulus, my body perceives it as a threat. So we ask suddenly, the child was sitting normally and I don't know what happened. Suddenly he started crying, he started shouting, he started hitting, he started head banging. So maybe something happened in the environment which was unperceivable for us. But a very little stimuli can be threatening for the child. So he responds to it in an exaggerated way, what we think, but for him, it is a very real danger. So this response, as talked, occurs in the limbic system or the rat brain. So what goes on neurologically is this information isn't going to the cortical region or the thinking brain. Okay, so when this limbic system takes over, so suppose there was this reaction that occurs. Suppose I heard a noise and the child started, the child heard the noise and child started screaming, shouting, and you're trying to calm him down and he's not calming down. So unless this limbic system loses that control and the cortex can exert its control back, the child will not be in a situation to understand you or to talk to you. That is why we say when that particular meltdown happens, so let it happen because there is no way you can do anything about it. Let the child calm down and then talk to him. This is the reason why. Because it is beyond the child's control. He cannot do anything, you cannot do anything. Cortex is shut down. He is not able to understand you, he is not able to listen to you, he is not able to process whatever words you are saying. Unless he's back to the calm zone and the cortical channels have activated, he can understand, then you talk about it. So when we perceive a danger, the information goes from the peripheral nerves to the snake brain to the limbic brain, and the response is sent immediately without any cortical involvement. When the system calms down, then the parasympathetic takes over. Then you have your information going from peripheral nerves, then the brainstem and the limbic system and the cortex. This happens when the child is in a regulated zone. So suppose if he heard the noise, although he has auditory sensitivities, but he knows how to control or how to regulate himself immediately. So there just might be a sudden reaction, but immediately he will calm down. Maybe he will start taking deep breaths, or maybe he'll put his noise cancelling headphones or something, but he will enter into that control zone immediately. Let the cortex decide what is to be taken, and the response is sent. So this sound or this touch or some visual thing which we think is not a threat, which we cannot understand that why my child is reacting to it. It might be nothing to us, but this feeling of threat is very, very real to them. So a touch that means nothing to you can be very frightening for the child. So you might feel that why is the child shouting, or why is he reacting in a way, or why is he running away? Because his body has entered into a sympathetic zone. All right. So a little about thresholds. So when we talk of sensory stimuli, we also talk of thresholds. So thresholds are the upper and lower limits of sensory inputs that an individual can tolerate. So, if maybe I am a normal person, and I'm getting the auditory stimulus continuously I'm getting. So first, look at the diagram. There is a lower limit and an upper limit. So deep sleep means you're not bothered. You're not registering that stimuli. Then you start registering, and the green one is your optimal arousal or just right zone. So here I'm not bothered. I am okay about the music, I'm okay about the sound. Then it starts irritating me a little bit when I enter into the yellow zone. And once I cross the yellow zone, then I'm really agitated, or I'm angry, I might be anxious, I might show reactions. Now, these are the reactions that I am showing as a regulated human being. Imagine a child who has an auditory sensitivity and he gets this much amount of stimulus. He is going to react in maybe an aggressive way, show some behaviors, might be very agitated, or just might zone out, or just run away from there. So any of these things can happen. So threshold is your limits where you can perceive, where you can handle yourself or keep yourself regulated to a certain amount of sensory stimulus. So for some children, they have very low threshold. So if you suppose give swing, okay, so they go onto the swing, you are giving to and fro motion. They can only tolerate it for a very short duration, and they very quickly enter into the yellow zone. As you can see, the red zone is more here as compared to the blue zone. So they enter into the overload quickly as compared to a counterpart. For a high threshold child, so low threshold child would be the sensitive child. High threshold child is where the registration only is occurring very late. So his red zone comes late. So if I'm hypo to something, I need more of the stimulus to understand that particular thing or to get that particular registration. And my threshold is very high to it. I can tolerate a good amount of sound maybe, or I can take good rides, fast rides, merry-go-rounds, and it's not going to affect me. So you can see some children, they can go for I'm sorry, they can go for the spinning rides a lot, where we will feel dizzy. So their thresholds are very high for the stimulus. There's another category which have a small window. So their registration takes time, but their optimal zone is very less. So their red zone is in place, the yellow is in place, but the optimal zone is very less. So if I'm getting say 2 rounds of the merry-go-round and I'm okay. The moment I get third, it will be out. I'll start reacting to it. So I have a very small window where I can regulate myself and keep myself in the adaptive response. So if it crosses that particular point, they immediately go into a sensory overload. They don't give us much time. So how the control happens? So control happens by habituation. So habituation is the brain's ability to ignore sensory inputs that it has become used to. So as what do we do in OT? We keep on giving controlled sensory inputs. I'm talking of the word controlled because if you give uncontrolled, the child will go into the sensory overload. So if we give graded and controlled sensory inputs, we are habituating the brain to them and not to let the child go into the sympathetic zone by perceiving that particular stimulus as a threat. So for example, if a child who has a vestibular hypersensitivity and I put him into a swing. So the moment I give him a swing and he's into this free, his hands are in the air and he enters into a motor reflex kind of position. So he is perceiving it as a threat and he is ready to maybe shout, ready to run away or do something aggressive. So we have to see that and we are immediately then we lower down the swing or maybe take him off the swing. So for that child, we will give very controlled graded movements. So just maybe one movement, go. Second day, I give two movements, go. I will gradually increase the number of movements so to make his brain habituated to a certain amount of required stimuli, which we perceive as normal, normalized rather, a range of normal. So up to this level, if the child is taking and he's producing an adaptive response, this is good enough sensory modulation. Okay, but the children who have sensory issues, habituation doesn't come very easily to them. So on everyday basis, even though you are providing the stimuli, the brain is still not getting adaptive. So it takes a longer time to make them habituated. If still not, we have to give them an adaptive mechanism. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about is language, as this is a common problem that if the child is into a sensory overload timing or he's having a situation where he's aggressive or he's hitting upon or he's behaving in a very weird way which you would not like to expect, but no matter how much you are trying to tell the child, he's not understanding. The reason for this is the language becomes unavailable, the centers become unavailable because the language centers are in the cortical regions of the brain. So when they enter into the sympathetic response from the limbic system, the cortical zone is shut down. So unless they come back to their parasympathetic zone and into the thinking mode, you cannot expect the child to understand what you're trying to say. So you need to take time, give him time to calm down and then talk to the child, maybe even the next day. So we need to understand this that what happens into the body is sometimes beyond the control of the child. So what important things that we can do is we can teach them regulation mechanisms first of all, calming strategies, give them adaptive mechanisms, and understand why my child is reacting in a particular way and what solution can I do for it. Talk about it when he's ready for it. So this was in very brief about the neuroscience behind sensory issues. I know it is a vast topic. I've tried to make it as concise as possible so that it is easy to understand. So if there's any question, we are open to it now.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Regarding this smelling seeking behavior, can you suggest how to overcome it?
Smelling seeking, like what kind of smells?
Like soap, mainly soaps, perfume, lotions. I believe it has some connection with the limbic system and the emotional regulation part.
Everything has a connection. So you need to see if your child is doing that as a stimming part to regulate himself or is he deriving some pleasure from it. So talking of this pleasure thing, few things are done by the children because it also releases some neurotransmitters. So we know GABA and glutamate. These are the main neurotransmitters which are working. So GABA is an inhibitory and glutamate is excitatory. So if he's smelling, maybe he's getting that glutamate neurotransmitters release, which is giving him a sort of pleasure. Okay. So for that, as I mentioned, you have to do a graded thing. You have to give him exposure to 2 to 3, start with 2 to 3 types of fragrances, give him on a daily basis, make his system habituated.
Okay.
Okay. So you have to give him that habituation. As for the emotions you're talking about, are you seeing that
Yes.
he calms down after smelling the lotions?
He's like, yeah, he kind of calms down. But he's really deeply smelling, like closing his eyes and smelling that much. He's wanting it.
Yeah. So he is seeking it as a calming mechanism, as a calming strategy for his body. So
Okay.
you can gradually give him exposure to the smell. So start with 2 or 3 maybe, then increase, keep on changing, do it on a regular basis, and the system will become habituated to it. Okay,
Then
it will.
he'll get bored of it after that, like
This is
because he.
habituation, what we can call bored of. Like if you
Okay.
give me swing on a daily basis, I'm craving swings, but if you give me,
Ah.
or maybe I'm craving a particular food, and you give me on a daily basis, so I'll be like,
Okay.
I'm done, I'm satisfied.
That
Okay, so
craving will come down then.
yes, satiation is what we call it. Satiation happens, the cravings come down.
Okay, like how you give the example for the swing, that child who is avoiding the swing, so you give the slow movement. So my
Yes.
son is the opposite. He's a seeker for the swing. The
So
more, but he gets excited in that.
yeah,
So what
so
is the treatment?
that time you have to give him a vestibular input, but in a different way. So if he's getting overexcited on the swing, so you have to maybe give him a running option, or maybe a jumping option on a trampoline, or a gym ball, bouncing, or something else which will regulate him. So when he's becoming overstimulated by swing, we have to give the vestibular, but in a different manner. Okay,
But
this
gym
is.
ball also he is getting excited. He can do it by himself. So
Hmm.
if we try to, like, do it in a control way, will that help on the gym ball
Yes,
control
yes, of
movement?
course. Yes, of course. See, he is seeking vestibular. Okay. So you have to give it in a controlled way and in a different format which can help him regulate it. Right now, it is not helping him get regulated. So you have
Yes.
to, when it comes to sensory integration, all the inputs are given in a way the child can get regulated and produce a particular response, the desirable response. So if he is not getting regulated, you need to change the mode of input. Okay,
Okay.
and swings and gym ball have to be in control. So maybe if the whole day he is not whole day, of course, but he is
Mm.
very frequently bouncing on the ball. So he is gradually, I talked of thresholds. So he is
Mm-hmm.
entering into the green, he is entering into the red, and then he's in sorry, yellow, and then he is already into the red zone where he has no control over.
Yes.
Okay, so he is himself raising his stimuli. So you have to keep
Yes.
those stimulus in control so that the child remains in the green zone.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Oh,
Doctor, can I ask?
yeah, please.
My son has two issues. First is he itches his private parts whenever he's free, and secondly, he plays with his shadows and reflections everywhere, in the
Hmm.
plate, in the mirror, anywhere. So,
Hmm.
are these sensory issues? What should I do?
There can be sensory issues. How old is the child?
Four, four. But he looks like a 2-year-old boy. He's just 11 kilos.
Okay, 4 years. See, as for the rubbing of the private parts, you just first of all you need to check it from the medical or the physical point of view that there is no itching, there is no wetness, there is no itchiness that he's feeling in the private parts. The clothing is comfortable enough. Okay, if that
Yes.
is ruled out,
Hmm. Yes, we have ruled that out.
then you need to go for the tactile stimulation. So you can go for the brushing towards the inner thigh area. So that usually helps. Maybe giving him a tighter underwear will help. Also, around the age of 3 to 5, we have that psychosexual time when the children they fiddle with their private parts. So if that zone, if it is it happening very frequently?
Yes, yes. Every time we know that he's quiet, it means he's rubbing his
Okay.
private parts.
So, like, and how long is he free? Is he involved enough?
Yes, he will start sweating, and if we don't stop him, I have to throw water on him and I have to distract him to something else. I have to intimidate him. Don't do it, else he will keep on doing that.
If you try distracting him from there, does he get distracted?
He shouts, he cries, but somehow I just say it in a strict way that don't do it. I'll make you bath. I'll make you do this, and then he stops.
Okay, if bathing is helping him, maybe you can go try and
No,
more.
he's scared of bathing actually. So I use it as a intimidating tool.
But you won't be able to do it for long. Okay, so try giving him more of tactile input and the brushing towards the private area and give him a tighter underwear to wear. Apart from that, try to keep the free time less, as minimal as you can, because he's deriving stimulation from his own body and it will turn into, it is actually a stimming behavior which he's showing. Okay, so give
Okay.
him a replacement and distract him through those things and keep him engaged as much as you can. For a child of age 4 years, I guess he won't be doing too much. So you need to find more ways to keep him involved, keep him into play, give him more of tactile plays that will help.
Okay. And playing with the shadows and the
Yeah.
reflections and every.
Again, a part of visual sensory. So I don't know if you're taking something for OT or sensory integration. So if you're not taking, you need to go for that and you need to check do the sensory profiling for your child, see the issues that are coming and accordingly you will have to do. So we have
Okay.
dark room exercises you can start with. In a dark room, you can just do the tracking exercises with a laser light, a torch or a candle, or you can do, flashlights in the dark room. That will also help him with that thing. Okay, you do pouring exercises that will also help.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, doctor.
Hello, ma'am.
May I ask my question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, ma'am, my question is, does this sensory issues decrease with age, or it will be for lifelong? Means even my daughter has a tactile, sensory, auditory, all the issues are there, and we have been working out to just give her the sensory diet so that she is like calm. But still now she is 8 years. My question is, these sensory issues decrease with age, or some of the sensory issues it goes off?
Yes, definitely. They decrease with age if you're working on them
Sorry,
continuously.
doctor. Can you just leave your number? We just wanted to get connected with you. Just have us some call and just disconnect. We wanted to connect personally.
You have our clinic number on the pamphlet. I'm dropping our clinic number in the chat box. So
Sure,
you
sure.
can
On a WhatsApp group?
Yes.
On a WhatsApp group?
On the
Sure.
WhatsApp
Thank
group
you.
also you can put up your query. Okay,
Sure,
I've
sure.
dropped
Thank
our
you.
clinic number in the chat box. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. So I'm sorry, we were talking about your daughter. She's 8 years old, and you're asking
Yes.
whether they reduce or not. So see, sensory
Yes,
issues do decrease with age if you're working continually on them. That is because of the habituation which I talked about. Okay. So,
yes.
but sensory keeps waxing and waning. Okay. So you might see some issue here, which is going down, but you might see something cropping up again. So it
Yes,
keeps
ma'am. We
waxing
have.
and waning.
Yes, ma'am. We have seen, like, one sensory issues we are working, it will go. Then again something new will come. So
Yes.
it is like once, like, we are working 6 months, it has not been there, and again after few months we'll see again it has come. So we notice these things. Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
No problem. So if you're seeing the same issues cropping up, maybe you have not habituated the child system enough. Okay. If it is just
Okay,
coming
okay.
for few days and going off on its own, it's fine. But as the child's age increases, you will also understand strategies how you're supposed to overcome that. Plus, you have to teach the child self-regulatory mechanisms and the calming strategies so that she can regulate herself. Because with age, it is practically
Yes,
not
yes,
possible that you're giving inputs to 14, 15, 16 years and you're continually giving the inputs. For how long will you do? So, you need to start teaching the child self-regulatory mechanisms.
yes,
Okay, and they are like everyone has sensory
yes.
issues. You have, I have, everybody has. But we know how to regulate ourselves. So teach the child regulating mechanisms.
Yes. Ma'am, anything is like some people say that it is a deficiency, vitamin deficiency or something like that. Ma'am, any type of anything works apart from sensory diet, keeping the child occupied? I know this is the main challenge for the parents also, to keep the child, because if they are free, they do all types of activities which they like.
No, see, again, here I'm talking about the self-regulatory mechanisms. First of all, for their interoceptive has to be in control. Okay, so the gut issues
Yes.
should be less, the sleep should be healthy, they should be well rested, well fed. And if gut is okay, so a lot of sensory issues decrease there because your interoceptive is under control. Otherwise, interoceptive itself keeps the limbic system into a sympathetic zone, into a stimulated zone. Okay,
Yes.
so if that is under control, your system is generally calm unless it receives a stimulus from outside. Now, talking of your outside stimulus, teach her play skills, how to keep herself occupied on her own, how she can constructively do independent activities. So these things we need to teach. It is practically not possible to keep the child involved 24/7 by the parent. But
Yes.
what do children do? They will bring puzzle, they will do something. What do NTs do? They will probably read a book, they will probably do a puzzle, they will talk to a friend, they will play squash, they will do something on their own which is constructive. This particular thing has to be taught to our kids. So
Yes,
teaching
ma'am.
her those things will definitely help.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Uh, do we
Hello, ma'am.
have?
Hi, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. What about the auditory sensitivity? Like if the child get distracted for each and every sound that is coming from outside and lose attention for everything.
Yeah, so for that, you have to do the auditory interventions, which are mainly the music interventions. You can go for therapeutic listening, you can go for SSP, you can go for focus programs. There are a variety of interventions available. So we particularly prefer SSP or the Safe and Sound protocol. Apart from the music interventions, you can give them the stimuli in a graded manner. So you can put headphones and you can start giving them soft sounds to start with. Okay, so the ear become comfortable, but these music programs have certain frequencies on which the body reacts or the auditory system reacts to and becomes comfortable. So what happens is the filtering of the sound is not happening. Whatever sound is coming from the background, it is not getting filtered. Like in my background, fan is running, AC is running, exhaust is running, something is happening, but my brain can filter it out and listen to your voice. Our kids cannot filter this out. Okay, so there you need filtration. So you can give start with soft music, increase the intensity of the music and give him a lot of auditory processing activity that will help reducing.
Okay.
Can I ask a
Thank
question,
you.
please?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a question? My son, he is an adult, and the problem with him is his self-talking behavior. He goes on talking, and that often becomes irrelevant. That was very much increased when it was when he was a kid. Now it has decreased, but still it persists. Now, can you suggest me certain method? Is it first of all, I want to ask whether this is a sensory issue or not.
How old is the child and how much?
He's
work
20. He's not a child. He's an adult. He's
Okay.
27. He's 27.
27. And how much verbal is he?
He's very much verbal, though he has some sort of disarticulation, and that is more I should say not organic. It is he's a lazy in working his oral muscles. I think because when he is made to do it, speech therapy, he can speak out well. I mean, his pronunciation is a bit problem, and
So I think the oral muscles have not been worked upon enough.
yeah, we try, like he has a tongue tie.
Okay.
So, but that shouldn't cause that much of problem, as I believe.
That depends on the severity of tongue tie.
Yeah, it's not that severe, but it is there to a certain extent, to moderate extent. So, like protruding his tongue, he has problem with protrusion of tongue. Like touching the, the soft palate, junction of hard and soft palate, he has problem. So to that extent only. So all those words which require the touching of palate, he has problem with that. But anyway, it is we can understand those. Now the problem with him is, as I've told you, incessant talking.
And when is that happening?
Yeah, when he's idle. Yeah, that is there. That is there. I understand because of that. But keeping him engaged all the time, it becomes problem. It becomes really
the same thing. Our kids now, like he's not a kid anymore, but then keeping oneself constructively engaged is one of the biggest challenges that we face. Okay, so we give all the therapies, we do everything, we bring them to a level. I hope your son is doing very good. So he's up to a level where he can interact probably very well with one-on-one and doing good in social scenarios. But when it comes to self-engagement, those skills are missing. So basically, if the self-engagement skills are increased, so the need to self-talk will decrease because he needs to keep himself occupied in those moments. Okay, and he is getting that occupancy or the comfort from talking with himself. You see many people talking to themselves when they have nothing else to do.
Like when I put him on food supplements, GABA, that works, you know.
That works because it is inhibitory. So that shuts down. Right. Yes, that shuts down your system, and it is working directly on the CNS and shutting it down. Okay, but it is not giving him any skill to keep himself involved constructively. So if you give him a skill so that he can regulate himself, you won't need to give GABA.
Yeah.
Okay, so condition the brain so that he can involve himself in a constructive manner.
Yeah, like he plays synthesizer, he sings, you know, but he watches TV, but you know, not actually he doesn't keep himself engaged to a great extent, to a longer extent, doing these activities. So it becomes tough at times, you know, especially when guests come to our place, you know, guests come to our house.
Yes,
and
we are engaging. Skill set needs to be widened.
Yeah.
Maybe involving him into I don't know what is he working?
No, he's not working.
He's not working. So any vocational courses that he's doing?
Yeah. Vocational, yeah. He goes to a school, I mean, institution where vocational training is being given.
Okay. So, you know, maybe he's at home if he's involved.
And especially during this lockdown, the thing has increased.
Yes, definitely they have increased because a child having a problem with self-engagement must be facing the biggest challenges in the lockdown thing, because we have less support from external things, less maids and everything. Everything is on us. So parents have less time and children have more time.
Right.
This is where the role of self-engagement or the play skills or independent activities come into the play. So try giving him more skills or more options where he can keep himself occupied depending upon his interest. So it is not really a sensory thing. If you give a replacement, it will work out most likely.
One more sensory thing is still there. It was there to a great extent when he was a kid, like moving curtains. That is visual thing. It still persists, you know, but lessen to a certain extent. Definitely lessen than
again, at what times?
Sorry?
What time it occurs? Like when is he doing that?
Like, you know, when he sits to do some work, he does it for a certain time, but I think he gets bored with that. Then he starts watching the moving curtains, like he's revolving, over ceiling fan. That thing is there.
So the time of attention span. So we have variety of attentions, you know, it may be the sustained attention is not enough. So you work on the sustained attention activities so he can remain on a particular task for a longer amount of time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so I think we'll be closing the session now. If you have any more queries, you can put up on our email, which is gigglesclinics@gmail.com. That is GIGGLESCLINICS.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Can I ask one question, please? Sorry to interrupt.
All right, let me just complete the email and give the phone
Okay.
number. All right. So gigglesclinics@gmail.com, or you can WhatsApp us at 81781630666. So I hope the session was useful to you all. And the last query now, and then we'll wind up.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, my son is 6 years old. Whenever he watches rhymes or when someone folding clothes or someone beading and कोई भी मूवमेंट वो देखता है तो वो हैंड को स्क्वीज करता है और बहुत एक्साइटेड होता है, लाइक माउथ ओपन करके या बहुत माउथ से प्रेशर लेता है, हैंड को स्क्वीज करता है जब भी वो कोई मूवमेंट देखता है, लाइक कोई कपड़े क्लोथ्स को फोल्ड कर रहा है, कोई उसके टॉयज के साथ खेल रहा है, बीडिंग या कुछ भी, और मतलब कोई भी मूवमेंट चल रही होती है या कोई खाना खा रहा है तो उसको भी देख के वो माउथ से बहुत मतलब मुंह अपने चीक्स को बहुत स्क्वीज करता है और कभी कभी माउथ ओपन करता है और हैंड को बहुत स्क्वीज करता है। हैंड तो वो ऑलमोस्ट सारा दिन ही करता है जब वो खाली बैठता है कुछ भी। तो मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा कि ये सेंसरी है या फिर ये कुछ और है। कैन यू
आप
प्लीज गाइड?
पहले कुछ थेरेपीज ले रहे थे?
नहीं, मैं घर पे ही कराती हूँ, मतलब खुद ही ऐसे गाइडेंस लेके थोड़ा बहुत, जैसे ओटी कराती हूँ मैं, जिम बॉल एक्टिविटीज वगैरह या रोलिंग, चपाती रोल कराना, प्रेशर देना और विल बर्गर, ब्रशिंग, कंप्रेशन, ओरोमोटर भी कराती हूँ मैं, जैसे वाइब्रेटरी ब्रश, ओरोमोटर एक्सरसाइजेस सब मैं खुद ही कराती हूँ घर पे।
ओके से अभी तो लॉकडाउन है बट आई एम श्योर आप पहले ले रहे होगे। आई डोंट नो द चाइल्ड सेंसरी प्रोफाइल एग्जैक्टली बट व्हाट यू टेलिंग इज अ लिटिल मिक्स। ठीक है, थोड़ा वो विजुअल ले रहा है, थोड़ा वो उसको स्टिम कर रहा है उस मूवमेंट से, पर्टिकुलर मूवमेंट से, एंड ही इज आल्सो टेकिंग द ओरल इनपुट, द pressure input.
Okay.
It can also be
Okay.
proprioceptive because jaw
Okay.
is like your TMJ is one joint which gives you the highest proprioceptive input in the body. Okay, so he
Okay.
might be seeking proprioceptive, he might be seeking oral, and he might be seeking visual. So we have to
Wait.
consider everything. और उसके
Okay.
अलावा हमें एक्टिविटीज करानी पड़ेंगी। अगर आप इसके लिए जिम बॉल करा रहे हो, इसके लिए अगर आप विलबाजर करा रहे हो तो ये सॉल्व नहीं होगी
Okay.
क्योंकि दैट इज नॉट द राइट इनपुट फॉर दीज एक्टिविटीज। ओके,
तो मेरे को क्या कराना चाहिए, करना चाहिए अभी? लाइक अभी तो ज्यादा मैं गाइडेंस ले नहीं पा रही किसी से, तो मैं खुद अगर घर पे कराती हूँ तो मुझे क्या कराना चाहिए इन तीनों के लिए?
see if you are already taking OT, first of all get in touch with your OT therapist or a sensory integration
Okay.
therapist and उनसे एक proper profiling करके activities लीजिए। What I can tell you in short is go for more of visual activities and the oral pressures. Okay,
Okay.
so giving the oral massage, therapeutic massage on the face, and your visual activities, a lot of colorful worksheets, pouring activities, tracking activities, quick blinking of the eyes will
Okay.
work. Plus, give him less time to be free. So, involve him in household chores. Involve him when you're doing the laundry. Involve him when you're serving the food. Involve him when you're folding the clothes. 6-year child can be involved in all of these things.
Yes, ma'am. He is already involved in all the household work and he is doing some of them. होल डे ही वांट्स टू बी एंगेज्ड हिमसेल्फ, लाइक वो फ्री बैठ ही नहीं सकता, उसको मुझे बड़ा मुश्किल होता है फ्री टाइम देना भी। वो सारा दिन ही एक्टिविटीज में इन्वॉल्व रहना चाहता है। मैं अगर फ्री टाइम भी देती हूँ तो उसमें भी वो अपने 2-3 टॉयज ले आता है और उसको करता है कि मेरे को ये करना है। वो फ्री बैठ ही नहीं सकता। बाकी मैं हाउस होल्ड में इन्वॉल्व तो रखती हूँ सारा
इतना
दिन।
टाइम उसको स्टेमिंग के लिए फिर कैसे मिल रहा है?
वो इन्हीं में, लाइक जैसे मैं उसको बोलती हूँ अभी आपका फ्री टाइम है, तो वो 2-3 टॉयज लेके दादू दादी के पास चला जाता है एंड देन जब वो उनके साथ बीटिंग करता है या उनके साथ कार्ड मैचिंग करता है कलर्स के या कुछ भी उनके साथ कोई भी एक्टिविटी करता है तो वो उसमें स्टिमिंग करने लग जाता है। कोई खाना खा रहा है तो उस टाइम वो थोड़ा सा 2-4 मिनट तो फ्री रहेगा क्योंकि सब खाना खा रहे हैं, उसमें वो करने लग जाता है। क्लोथ्स फोल्ड कराना उसको बहुत अच्छा लगता है तो वो क्लोथ्स लेके आ जाता है दादी के पास एंड देन वो बोलता है कि
हेलो हेलो
हेलो
हेलो
हेलो, कैन यू हियर मी मैम?
yes yes hello, you were saying something.
Yes ma'am.
Uh-oh.
Someone
Please,
actually,
whoever is unmuting, please don't. We need to wind up the session. Yeah.
तो इतना टाइम तो उसके पास फ्री होता ही नहीं। अब जैसे उसको हाफ एन आवर में मॉर्निंग में टीवी देती हूँ, हाफ एन आवर में इवनिंग में टीवी देती हूँ। उसमें जितना हाफ एन आवर में वो टीवी लेता है वो अपनी चॉइस की राइम्स लगवाता है। अगर मैं कोई और भी लगा दूंगी तो फिर वो चेंज होकर कुछ और आ जाता है। तो वो उसमें उस हाफ एन आवर में वो बहुत करता है, वो स्ट्रीमिंग बहुत ज्यादा। और वो टीवी के लिए मतलब मैं टोटली होल डे में 1 आवर टीवी देती हूँ, हाफ एन आवर मॉर्निंग एंड हाफ एन आवर इवनिंग, जिसमें मुझे भी अपने घर के हाउस होल्ड एंड ऑल करना होता है। बस उसमें वो भी बहुत स्टिमिंग करते हैं, खड़ा हो जाएगा बेड पे, इधर उधर रन करना और वो थोड़ा सा आवाज निकालना, उस टाइम वो बहुत ज्यादा पीक पे है सब कुछ।
सी स्टिमिंग टोटली कभी भी खत्म नहीं होती है, ठीक है, इट
यस
कैन बी
मैम।
रिप्लेस्ड, इट कैन बी अलाउड। सो कुछ सर्टेन अमाउंट तक अगर हम अलाउ करते हैं, फ्यू मिनट्स इन द डे और हाफ एन आवर इन द होल डे, सो इट इज ओके फॉर द चाइल्ड, क्योंकि अ चाइल्ड ऑन स्पेक्ट्रम नीड्स टू स्टिम फॉर हिज रेगुलेशन।
यस गॉट इट।
तो थोड़ा बहुत करने में इट इज ओके, लेकिन
यस
अगर वो टास्क के बीच में स्टिम करना शुरू हो रहा है तो वहां पे उसका अटेंशन लैक कर रहा है।
नहीं, टास्क के बीच में तो नहीं करता, बट वही जब वो किसी को मूवमेंट करते हुए कुछ देखता है वो तब, या फिर वो टीवी के टाइम, यही है
तो
टास्क
आप
जब वो
इसका थोड़ा
एक्टिविटी।
सा विजुअल इनपुट बढ़ाइए, विजुअल सेंसरी
ओके
एक्टिविटीज बढ़ाइए,
ओके
और
मैम।
उसकी आप अटेंशन स्पैन पे काम करिए, तो आपको
राइट,
डेफिनेटली।
ओके ओके, थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू सो मच।
All right. So thank you everyone for joining in. I hope it was beneficial. So we will meet you soon. Have a good day.
थैंक यू।